Well, to chat more about this, I'm joined on Connections Radio by psychologist and wellbeing consultant Lee Chambers. Lee, welcome to Connections Radio. Nice to have you on board today. Tell us what you do at Wellbeing then. Hello there.
Yeah, so I run a wellbeing company where we go into SMEs, and what we do is look at wellbeing strategy, see what's currently being done, measure its effectiveness through data, and then look at ways we can create engaging programs that help people look at elements such as mindset, how they can manage stress, how they can become more resilient, and really look at the wider picture of diversity, inclusion, and how we can create psychological safety so people can thrive in the workplace.
So it is all about thriving in the workplace, isn't it, at the moment? And with so many working from home, it is tricky to feel like you're involved in the workplace, full stop, really. But why are so many of us feeling discouraged by the knockbacks of our job search? And how do we overcome those feelings, Lee?
Yeah, so it's certainly a time at the minute where it's particularly challenging. The job market is very competitive. Certain industries have found themselves struggling to be able to provide the jobs that they normally would do. But also the landscape has changed considerably over the past year. And indeed have carried out the research and started to identify that, there's a certain element of job seeking where people are starting to feel a little bit less optimistic, and actually their own self-belief is starting to be impacted by the elements of the job search where they're getting less recognition of application. They're finding that there's a lot out there. Jobs are different. They're not finding things that they expect would fit their skill set. And it's because of everything that's going on in the external environment, they're actually starting to feel that their own self-belief and own self-worth is starting to become discouraged. And obviously to go out there and continue applying for new jobs does take quite a lot of courage. And a lot of these different elements, as we start to look and realize that confidence plays a vital role. Confidence in being able to put yourself out there, to utilize your networks, to start searching and seeing the possibilities that are out there. The confidence to continue going when you receive knockbacks, when you receive rejections, and being able to bounce back and be resilient to keep going and see how can I potentially get better from that challenge that I faced, from that news. Can I be bold enough and brave enough to ask for feedback so I can continue to develop? And then within the interview process, being and having the clarity on the skills and value that you can bring and how you can articulate that to show the value you can bring to potential employers, and actually be confident enough to ask questions and see how meaningful and purposeful that particular career path for you. With jobs being a particularly important source of stability within our lives, impacting our financial well-being and giving us a structure and routine to live within, it's no surprise to see that confidence is pivotal to that. And with Indeed and the Short Trust identifying that confidence is starting to become an increasing barrier to that process, they've taken action to create these collaborative workshops going forward.
And looking at people's well-being, if you like, Indeed, as you've mentioned, the jobs website is partnering with Short Trust. Have you seen a huge decrease in confidence among people? Because you mentioned it just now. You apply for a job, you get a knockback, you get a letter, you get an email come through saying, sorry, you didn't get the job this time, try next time, better luck good luck for the future. These are all knockbacks. It's hard to come back from a knockback, isn't it? And is this something that Indeed and Short Trust are finding out, that during COVID, people have lost that confidence?
Yeah, so they started to identify that because of the uncertainty in the world out there, because of the competitiveness of the job market, and because a lot of the structures and anchors that people normally have in the daily routine, people's movements have been restricted and people's, general daily lives have been shaken up a little bit. And what that does is it does create this underlying anxiety, which then impacts on people's confidence, because those previous elements where you got recognition that, unfortunately you've not been successful this time, very much depends how it's worded and communicated. in when with HR departments being so busy, there are a lot of different challenges to actually getting that communication and getting and being able to be resilient through those challenges. And really, indeed, and the short have identified that one of the biggest benefits to people now is the ability to help build their aspirations for the future, because a lot of people can't see that far out because it's become blurred. So they've started to build workshops that increase that clarity. They start to show people how to manage knockbacks, how to be more resilient, how to see things as a challenge rather than a threat, and how to really utilize those moments of courage when they're applying and see the options and possibilities of how they can potentially use the skills they have elsewhere, how they can look to maybe reskill or upskill, or how they can start to look at maybe what they can do now as a sideways move career-wise, because many of us want that career aspiration of going upwards and becoming, more really more developed in our careers. And at the moment, maybe it's an opportunity to look to utilize our skills elsewhere, to build new skills. And that requires us to be able to look at the situation, have an acceptance that sometimes we're not always going to get that position against a lot of competition, but actually see ways to grow and develop and see the possibilities and the options rather than the limitations and barriers that we do face at the moment.
And some frightening figures out there as well. Right in saying that 60,000 people in the UK are categorised as being discouraged. That's quite a frightening figure.
Yeah, and it's that when unfortunately people feel discouraged, they're at that point where they honestly believe that entering the job market has become a very, very courageous step. And we never want people to be in that position. And obviously, the Shore Trust exists to help people find meaningful and purposeful work. And that is the modus operandi. That is the one thing that really drives their work forward. And indeed are obviously the biggest place where people come into when they're looking to find work as well. So as a collaboration, they're in a great place of power to really deliver meaningful change on this. But ensuring that people are not discouraged and they have that confidence to be able to enter the job market, it might be a bit outside the comfort zone when they're starting to feel like that. But if we can start to help them find ways to take small actions, little things to celebrate, and little ways to just pop the toe outside of that comfort zone starts to grow and they start to feel more confident. They start to have more self-esteem and they start to find that they can navigate that job search journey with a lot more confidence and a lot more assurity that they can go out there and get a job that's meaningful to them.
I'm sure you've seen the movie Groundhog Day with Bill Murray, haven't you? Where he wakes up, the alarm wakes him up every morning, and the same news bulletin comes on the radio. It's a great film, but every day is a little bit like Groundhog Day at the moment. What advice would you have to somebody who wakes up like that and thinks, "Oh Lord, here we go again"? I mean, trying to remain positive and trying to get up and get at it, so to speak. What advice would you have to somebody who finds it hard to do that?
Well, it's definitely a case of, we've had a lot of the socially defined anchors removed from our lives this past year, the things that we normally do that give us a sense of what time and what day it was. So it's really important that we actually look to plan things in that we can, because that gives us that feeling of control, even though some of the external elements are not in our control. And when we start to actually create a routine and a plan and stay consistent with our sleep and start to actually build a routine of our own, which includes doing things that help our job search, such as, consuming positive media, looking at ways we can learn new things, learn new skills, and actually start to almost build our lives around developing ourselves so that we can be the best we can be to move into that role. And that is no doubt about it. It's a challenge to really start to move that, because it can feel a little bit disheartening, especially if you've been unemployed for a while. And yet there is a job out there for everyone. In fact, there's a great job out there for you right now. And if you can start working towards that, you might not be able to see it right now, but every small step you take, every bit of progress will actually make you wake up feeling that it's not Groundhog Day, because you're a little bit further ahead than you were yesterday. And actually, I have the ability and the autonomy to control quite a lot of these elements and start to see things I'm grateful for. I'm start to be able to look at ways that I can learn. And by doing that, you start to see what you can do rather than what you can't. And suddenly you start changing those elements. So each day is different and each day brings you something new that you can cherish.
Okay, so if anybody wants to find out more details about the collaboration between Indeed, the jobs website, and Shore Trust, where can we get more information, Lee?
So the best place to start would be the workshops that they are doing in collaboration, which include workshops on confidence, self-belief, growth mindset, proactivity, and they are available on Indeed's Facebook page from the 28th of January. But you can also get an awful lot of information, resources, and access to the job market at indeed.co.uk and shoretrust.org.uk.
Great to talk to you. Psychologist and wellbeing consultant Lee Chambers. Thanks for joining us on Connections Radio today.
An absolute pleasure, Glenn.